Welcome back to the Link by Golf podcast. I'm your host Ross McGuire, and in this week's episode I'm delighted to be joined by Martin Dempster. Martin has had an incredible career in golf. He's been the correspondent on golf with the Scotsman for over 30 years. In this episode we talk about that journey in life and also his recently released book, The Art of Scottish Golf. Let's go over to Martin and hear from him now. Thanks for joining the podcast, Martin. It's great to see you. How you doing?
Very well, thank you.
So, Martin, the way the podcast starts in every episode so far is just for the guests to tell me where they're from and how they get into golf.
Well, I'm originally from a village called Coldingham, which is down in Berwickshire. And my dad was the butcher in Coldingham, and it was through him that I got into golf. He used to play Eyemouth and Dunbar.
Nice.
Eyemouth at that time was a wee 9-hole course, and I spent my summer holidays there, just down there every day. And I used to play there for just hours on end, to be honest. And the Sunday morning was when my dad and his mates, guys from Coldingham and Eyemouth, used to go up to Dunbar.
Right.
And just getting to play with them at Dunbar and spend some time with them in the clubhouse afterwards was just invaluable. And that's basically where I sort of fell in love with golf.
Brilliant. And then I know that you're clearly a journalist at the Scotsman, but how did that career start for you? You obviously got a love for golf, but how did you get into it with the Scotsman, or maybe before that?
Well, way before that.
Right, okay.
Well, I used to, when I was about 14 or 15, I used to do the football, the local team that played was St Abbs Thistle, and I used to do the match reports for St Abbs Thistle for the Berwickshire News, which was the local paper. So I used to send, it was like maybe 100, 120 words in, and it was very cat sat on the mat stuff, so to speak. But that's where it all started. And when I left school, just where my birthday fell, I was just about to turn 16 when I left school, and I got a job. I was actually in the advertising department, the Tweeddale Press Group headquarters in Berwick, and it was owned at the time by it was a New Zealand family, the Smales, and they were sort of legendary in the industry then. They had all the papers in the Borders, the Southern Reporter, Kelso Chronicle, the White paper, and they also had the Berwickshire News, the Berwick Advertiser, and the Annick Advertiser. So working for them back then, my first job, and it was just brilliant. It was just such a great company to work for, and it was just, well, basically, what I started out as, it was a clerical job in the sort of advertising department. It wasn't selling advertising, there was more the sort of admin stuff. And from there, the Annick Advertiser, they were looking for a junior reporter, and I got that job, and that was just fantastic, because a junior reporter for a weekly paper, you did everything. You did court cases, you did council meetings, you did flower shows, you did sheep shows back then in rural Northumberland, the odd bit of sport here and there, and it was just a great apprenticeship, and that was fantastic. And I then got the chance to join the Berwickshire News in a similar role, the sister paper, and worked on there. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Obviously, it was my home patch, and doing the same type of stuff. And then I then left there just when I was about 22ish, I think it was, and went down to Wrexham I worked on
Oh, really? Wow.
a paper called the Evening Leader, the Wrexham Evening Leader, which was actually based in Oswestry, bizarrely. But I was the football correspondent that covered Wrexham. Now, obviously, Wrexham now are in the news, obviously, with Ryan Reynolds and his pal. But back then they were down in probably it was obviously pre-Premiership days in England, so like the old Division 1, 2, 3 and 4, and Wrexham were, I think it was maybe third division then, managed by a guy called Dixie McNeil, who was a bit of a legend, and Joey Jones, who went to Liverpool. He came back. He was a Wrexham boy who came back, and used to travel. I used to travel around England covering them, so that was great fun. So and then came back up to Scotland. Had a spell on the Dunfermline press. My wife, she's from Fife, and that's what sort of led me to I now live in Dalgety Bay in Fife. Been here for more than 30 years, and then had a spell with the David Begg Sports Agency in Glasgow. And David was a bit of a legend, obviously, in broadcasting, but he had an agency, freelance agency, and that's where things really started to take off in a golf sense, because that was the main sort of part of that job. So I started covering a lot more golf from there, and then joined the Scotsman group round about the launch of Scotland on Sunday, which was sort of mid-90s, I think it was. Maybe earlier than that, slightly earlier than that. And did shifts on that, and got a job being a sub-editor, a sports sub-editor on the Scotsman. Then became the Hearts reporter for the Evening News in Edinburgh, and that was terrific. Tommy McLean was the manager when I first started doing it. And then Jim Jeffries quickly came in. And
I was going to say, I'd actually even forgotten that Tommy McLean was the manager at one point.
He was. I didn't end very well, unfortunately. But then Jim came in, and I covered the three cup finals between Hearts and Rangers, and obviously Hearts hammered in the first one. The second one, the Coca-Cola Cup final, was a bit closer at Parkhead, and then Hearts won the one in 1998. And I always say that work-wise, that was probably the most enjoyable spell in my working life, because I used to go down to the training ground. Hearts trained at Pinkie Primary School in Musselburgh back then, and used to go down in the Monday morning, and I could speak to whoever I wanted for the rest of the week. You could speak to 5 or 6 players. You could fill your notebook, and of course nowadays the access to players is like night and day. So, and I just got on great with Jim and Billy Brown, Peter Houston, Paul Hegarty was on the coaching staff back then. It was just a great bunch, and I still bump into the likes of Neil McCann. He was terrific, and just a great time. So,
and Jim Jeffries is a big golfer, is he not? As well?
Unbelievable. Most competitive man I've ever come across on a golf course.
Unbelievable. That does not surprise me.
Unbelievable. Good golfer. But he's some boy, Jim. He's very competitive in football, and that sort of transfers onto a golf course as well. So I went from. Sorry.
I was going to say, does he play at Gullen? Am I right in thinking that
he does? Yeah. He's obviously lives in Lauder. He's a member of the local club in Lauder. And then he played at Dunbar. Dunbar was his home sort of club for a while, and then he's moved. His home club now is Gullen, and he plays down there. I think there's some of the old Hearts boys, the likes of Eamon Bannon maybe, and people like that.
Oh wow!
They play down there, and George McNeil, the famous George McNeil, he's part of that group. So I know Jim obviously had a wee scare. It was down at Gullen where he had his heart attack, and was lucky to survive that. Obviously,
I didn't know that.
No, Jim was brought back in an ambulance. I think it was on the way up to the hospital. So he had a big scare, but he's a very healthy looking man, and he loves his golf. So when we used to go on trips, I remember we used to go. I think the trip before the 1998 Cup final. Hearts went down to Stratford, was where they were based.
Right.
Stratford-upon-Avon, and I was the only journalist that got to go down and be part of the week.
My
And I
goodness.
remember when we arrived on the Sunday, I think we went down, we played golf at Forest of Aberdeen.
Very nice.
Obviously, they then sort of started the preparations the next week. And what people forget is that season, Hearts had lost every game to Rangers. Rangers just had their number, and they had to come up with a sort of system to try and sort of change their fortunes against Rangers, and they came up with something that obviously helped. They got an early goal. It was obviously Jim's a massive jambo, and for Jim to be the guy who ended Hearts' trophy drought meant so much to him. So then I enjoyed that spell, and then I became the sports editor of the Evening News, which time I was still sort of covering a bit golf. Then my mentor back then was a guy called Ian McNiven,
right,
who was a legendary sort of football golf correspondent in Edinburgh. Big Ian, his most favourite events were the Dispatch Trophy and Lothians matches. Ian, although he went to the Open and the Scottish Open, he didn't like them. He liked to get back to Edinburgh to his pals, and people would come, and he never move for times. It was like the old school. He'd just sit in the corner, and people came to him.
The Dispatch Trophy, I don't know about it now. I've been away for a few years, but it used to be massive, absolutely massive in terms of
one of my
people playing.
Yeah, one of my favourite events, because the field number has dropped significantly, which is just sort of symptomatic of entries overall. But what people forget is a lot of the teams that used to play in that, banks and insurance companies and solicitors, are no longer, the companies don't exist. So,
of course,
but they still have I think it's about 30, 40 teams playing up at the Braids in Edinburgh, which is
wow.
If someone's never been to the Braids, they need to rectify that, because it's a stunning golf course. It's a wee bit quirky in bits, but some of the best views you get for a golf course in Scotland. So
absolutely.
So I used to cover that, and then I then left the Scotsman group in 2003. It was I was got the chance to become the editor of Bunker magazine in Glasgow.
Right.
So I went through there and enjoyed my time there. I had 6 years through there. Obviously, the guys that had launched Bunker, three sort of Glasgow guys, they had done a great job with it, and they were keen to sort of take it on to the next level. And in my time there, we launched a Scottish club golfer newspaper, an English club golfer newspaper, and a Welsh one as well. It was the first time the company had sort of ventured south of the border. So that was an enjoyable spell. And then I would have to say, newspapers are my sort of first love, and I got a chance to come back to the Evening News just as a sort of general sports reporter in 2009. And the timing was right, and it sort of just came back at just about that time. Mike Aitken, who was the Scotsman golf correspondent at the time, Mike sort of retired not long after. I think it was 2009. He was at the 2009 Open at Turnberry. Just not long after that, I think he was at maybe 2003. I'm not sure if Mike was at the Open in 10. I think it might have been, and then my role sort of evolved then, and I now cover golf for the Scotsman, Scotland on Sunday, and the Edinburgh Evening News, and absolutely, so I love my job. I'll get as long as I come up with stories to fill space. I'm allowed to get on with it. So really lucky.
You do a phenomenal job. I mean, there's not many golf correspondents left in Scotland, but the amount of content and the stories that you bring
left
to
in
life.
Britain.
I know, but honestly, the stories that you bring to life are fantastic. It's great to hear, and you do everything right, almost grassroots all the way up to international European tour, and then
that's
majors.
What I like about it. Yeah, that's what I like most about it. I think obviously the Ryder Cups and your Opens and the Masters and stuff like that are great, but I just love being at a Women's Scottish Open or something like that. Just it's a different sort of group of people you're talking to, and as I say, an event like the Dispatch Trophy. I've not been for a wee while, but like the PGA Scottish Championship and obviously these events that Paul Laurie runs on the Tartan Pro Tour, they've been great for helping develop young Scottish talent, and I think amateur events as well, the Scottish Amateur and events like that, because there's no doubt that by doing that you get to know the guys when they come through. I mean, Grant Forrest, for example, I think Grant might have been 14-year-old when I first wrote about Grant.
Yeah.
He's in his 30s now, and Stephen Gallagher, I've known Stephen Gallagher for 30 odd years. I mean, Stevie turned 50 recently, and
That's
it's
right,
just great to know all these guys that you have a strong connection with, and I think they know what the job you do and trying to promote the game, and that's a nice feeling, really.
Yeah, I mean, at the elite amateur level and the PGA regional stuff in Scotland, and you're talking about Paul Laurie's Tartan Tour, the level of golf was phenomenal, and people have got really no idea. They think that the best golf's all played on TV, which maybe to an extent you could argue, of course it is, but the level of ability a lot of these players is just outrageous when you see them.
Yeah, I think you and I know someone the likes of Paul O'Hara. And Paul O'Hara, one of Scotland's top amateurs when he came through, and did well. I think it was on the Pro Golf Tour or the Alps Tour, one of those tours, one of the satellite tours. Paul was really successful in that, and I think people do underestimate how difficult it is to go for that third tier, second tier up to the main tour, and it's getting harder and harder. But it doesn't mean to say that the likes of Paul O'Hara is a fantastic golfer, and lots of people know that. But to be successful at that very, very high level, you have to have you have to be talented, but B, you have to have that mental sort of fortitude as well. I can go back to 2 or 3. I'm not going to name any names, but guys who were really, really good amateurs in Scotland, and early part of their professional career, they looked as though they were going to do okay, and then all of a sudden, they couldn't handle the fact that this was their job, and they were holding putts for a living, and some of these guys didn't play golf anymore, and it's
I know.
It's a shame, but it's also a good sort of reminder that to be the really, really top player, you have to be really, really good to have that opportunity.
I think it's been skewed the last few years as well, particularly on the PGA Tour, and actually, of course, here with some of the guys that have come through in Europe. But folk are thinking that people come out of college and go and win the tour right away. But you look at the last couple of winners over the last few weeks from Europe, and Julien Guerrier and Paul Waring. Now, both of them haven't won a lot of tours. I think Julien Guerrier's actually won one full tour
that
event.
Was his, yeah.
Paul Waring maybe 3 or 4.
No, that was only second. That was only Paul Waring's second. Yeah.
But those guys, I mean, the golf that Paul Waring played at the weekend was outrageous. Absolutely outrageous.
But that's the beauty of golf, I think, is that these guys can be out there for a long time, and just keeping a card these days is something that deserves applause in some ways.
Absolutely.
Just to be at that top table, so to speak, and have that opportunity. And there you go. I mean, Paul Waring he went into the Abu Dhabi HSBC Championship just trying to get into the final event of the season in Dubai, and then wins it. He's now secured a PGA Tour card for next season. So that's career changing, and that is the beauty of golf. And the Challenge Tour Grand Final was in Mallorca a couple of weeks ago, and the 20 players who come off that, more and more these guys that are coming off the Challenge Tour already. I think the 20 who graduated last year, 15 of the 20 kept their card on the main tour, and 3 of them won.
That's incredible. That's really high.
I think it'd take a long time to actually go through the records and check, but I would have to think that could be the best statistical season for in that respect, and that just shows you how good these boys are that are coming off. And obviously Bob McIntyre came off the Challenge Tour, as did Ewan Ferguson, Connor Syme, Callum Hill, Grant Forrest. I think for a while there, I think the great Alan McCloskey, Bothwell Castle pro, Alan, he had a statistic at one point not that long ago. I think the average age of the Scots on the main tour was 34 or 36, something like that, which wasn't good. It's come down a bit, obviously, with the wee sort of rushy players that we had going on, but we're starting again we need some more talent. These we've got good young players, and Callum Scott, who won the silver medal in the Open at Troon this year, and Conor Graham and his brother Gregor Graham. But we just need to keep the talent coming through, and hoping that every couple of years we'll at least get one or two that are getting onto the tour, because even now you look at Bob McIntyre's 28. As I say, Grant Forrest is in his 30s, so we've got a wee gap there again. Young 20-somethings that we could do with just coming through, just to keep that sort of conveyor belt of talent going. But it's easier said than done.
I know, and I think trying to work out that formula in Scotland's a sort of unsolvable problem, isn't it? There's no easy fix, ultimately.
At the moment, everyone looks at the Danes. The Danes have had an unbelievable run. Obviously, led by the Hojard twins, Rasmus and Nikolai. They've got Norgjaard, who won the British Masters this year. They've even got a guy called Hamish Brown. The most Scottish name in golf is a Dane. And I actually spoke to him at the Challenge Tour Grand Final. He was one of the players who graduated now.
Oh, wow.
His dad, Marcus, was originally from Perthshire.
Oh, we can claim him then.
There's definitely a wee sort of hint of a Scottish accent when you speak to him. But he's come through the Danish system. His dad went over. He's a club pro over in Denmark. And but he said, obviously I asked him, that, is there a sort of secret formula there? But I don't think there is. I think they've just, they've got a good system, and it's a bit like the Scots did 2 or 3 years ago. They all feed off each other. When one or two are successful, the others want to be successful. They're certainly the nation at the moment who are producing in Europe anyway. They're producing an incredible amount of DP World Tour players and winners.
Yeah, and you look at, just as you're talking, I'm thinking about Ireland. Ireland went through an incredible purple patch, but even for Ireland, it's sort of dried up at the moment, right? In terms of new players coming through.
Yeah. Obviously, Ireland had the McIlroy, Harrington, Darren Clark, Graham McDowell. The run of players they had was phenomenal, and it looked like the Paul Dunn was going to be the next superstar.
Absolutely.
He won the British Masters at Close House. Rory McIlroy was finished second in that, and then led in the Open at the final round. I think it was at St Andrews.
That's right,
2015 would that be? Or 2020? 2000. Yeah. Anyway, one of those. But he's sort of fallen off the cliff edge a bit. I don't think he got through second stage in the European DP World Tour qualifying school this year. So, and that's a sign that just shows you that everything can be looking great. The Irish, admittedly helped by a Scot, their national coach is a guy called Neil Manchett, who also coaches Shane Lowry. He's originally from Edinburgh. He's the Irish Golfing Union in Ireland national coach, and he's done a terrific job bringing through lots of good amateurs. But at the moment, Conor Purcell, I think it was, he got his card, DP World Tour card for next season. But they're sort of Tom McKibben's obviously done a good job. Northern Ireland's Tom McKibben, he's won on the DP World Tour already, so he looks like he could be a sort of big name going forward. But yeah, no, I don't think they'll ever replicate that sort of purple patch they had for a few years there in the majors.
No, I mean, the talent level at that point was crazy. So, we talked a lot about other people, Martin, but let's talk about your golf. So, you're a member at Aberdour, and am I right in saying that? Aberdour, right?
Yeah, correct.
One of my favourite golf courses, so you need to tell the listeners about Aberdour and the type of golf they could find in Fife if they've never been before. I'd love to hear about that.
In Aberdour?
Aberdour and then throughout Fife, yeah.
Oh yeah, well Aberdour, I mean, it's a great little golf course. It's not long, but it's still a really, really good challenge. It starts with 2 par 3s, which is very unusual, but 2 potential card wreckers. Although not for someone, must be about 15 years ago, one of the members started 1-1, which was just incredible.
Oh my goodness.
I think at that point,
is crazy.
I think he played on actually, but I think if you start 1-1, you've got to think that it's not going to get any better than this. But he did. Yeah, but it's just a very picturesque. It's down on the sort of banks of the Forth, looking across to Edinburgh, and it's just a wonderful place to go for a walk and hit a few shots. So, I love playing golf there. I don't enjoy having a carbon pencil in my hand. I'm rubbish at playing in medals. I don't like medals, but you've got to try and play them every now and again.
To be fair, you're good with a pencil when you're writing about golf, Martin.
Well, yeah, I might stick to that. But yeah, I've just not got I don't know what it is. I've just not got I've got patience, but it's just like if I hit a bad shot, I'm still thinking about that bad shot 3 holes later when I've had three bad holes in a row. I love the pros. The pros are so good at hitting a bad shot and then bouncing back, and that bad shot's forgotten about. So anyway, but yeah, great, and Fife obviously. To live in Fife, my wife was born in St Andrews, and it's only sort of just under an hour to Dalgety Bay. So anytime you go up to St Andrews just for a walk, it's got so much going. St Andrews, apart from the golf, it's just one of those wonderful places in the world to spend some time. And there's so many great courses. Obviously your Trails and Ely, Leaving, London Links, all these courses, and then you've got the new ones in Kingsbarns, which obviously every year it co-hosts the Dunhill Links, and the new one at Dumbarton Links. And
I've heard that's really good. Have you played that yet?
When I heard that they were building another course in Fife, my initial reaction was, oh no, not another one. But Dumbarton's really, really been a good addition because it's on the sort of the south, it's on the opposite side of the hill from your St Andrews and Kingsbarns, on the sort of the Forth side, and it was designed by Clive Clark, an American who used to do co-commentator with Peter Allis for the BBC. And he's designed a really, really nice golf course. It's sort of open off the tee, and the challenge is the second shot and round about the greens. He's got 3 short par 4s on the course, which are terrific. I think everyone loves a hole that you can have a go at with driving, but at the same time it can bite you. And David Scott, who's the general manager, David's obviously a well-known figure in Scottish golf. He was at Kingsbarns when it opened, and he was at the Old Court Hotel for a spell. I mean, David's done a great job there, and they've got just a lovely clubhouse, just one of these modern clubhouses with big, panoramic windows, and it feels like a sports bar inside. And it's just a really nice addition. So, I mean, Fife, it's all over Scotland. All these areas of Scotland are just terrific. I remember, Scotland's Golf Coast is East Lothian.
Yes.
That's like someone came up with this slogan, Scotland's Golf Coast. Nobody would disagree that can be East Lothian, but equally it could have been Fife, it could have been Ayrshire, it could have been the Murray Coast, or Carnoustie, Angus or that. So we're very, very lucky, and you never take that for granted.
And I say
Or
it to people.
Never.
I say it to people all the time, because I live in England now, and I'm like, they'll definitely get bored of me saying it, but I'll say to them, go on to Golf Empire or go on to Happy Golf and go and basically find yourself like 4 days weekend away to play Open Championship qualifying courses, top courses that you just won't believe how good they are. And you can play in the Opens as well, and it's, maybe 30, 40, 50 pounds a round, or sometimes for 2 rounds. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I think the fact in golf, I think that's the beauty of golf as well, is that people can walk in the footsteps of the players who play in the Open, at Troon, for example, this year, and St Andrews or wherever. But no, just all these courses, people can go and play them and face the same challenge. Okay, the setup might be different for when you go, when the Open's on and or Scottish Open's on, but you're still hitting the same shots or trying to hit the same shots as the pros. And I mean, Scottish golf. There's so many good people in Scottish golf. Right through the game. I mean, I think we're guilty sometimes of sort of being negative, and as soon as something goes wrong, everyone jumps all over it. But I think we should just take a step back sometimes and just appreciate what we've got, because you and I know there's people all over the world would love to play the courses that we get to play and play them as members, obviously at a rate that's unbelievable. Obviously, a lot of these high-end courses, the green fees are going up. I think Turnberry next year is going to be £1,000, I think.
Wow.
At a certain time, I believe that's aimed at getting people to stay at the hotel, but they'll get it cheaper, obviously. So this is the person turning up that's not staying. So, but £1,000 for one person for a game of golf, that's astonishing, really. But a lot of these other courses that want to attract American visitors, they have to set at a certain level, because if they go below that, the Americans and others say, oh, well, why is it cheap? Why is it,
I know.
for example, £200 cheap? I'm not going to go there. Which we can't get our heads around that, but that's the way it works.
I'm sure that happened years ago and still does with golf coaches. When they put their prices up, they get more people going to them. Ironically.
I know. It's a funny world, isn't it?
Yeah. But talking about all the things you've mentioned there, I mean, you have taken a step back and you've taken the time to create and write a book called The Art of Scottish Golf. So I'd love to hear more about the book, Martin, and how it came about, and just the process and what's gone into it.
Yeah, well, it came out of the blue, to be honest. Around about Christmas time last year, the publishers, Black and White, based in Edinburgh, Ali McBride, who's the managing director, she got in touch and said, we've got an idea for a book and we would like to talk to you about it. And I thought, okay. And I suppose at some point, when you're a journalist, you sort of think at some point you would maybe like to write a book.
Of course.
But my concern was that, and as well, everyone who knows me in the industry, I do work hard at my own job, and I'll give it my sort of heart and soul. So my big concern was I've not got the time to do this. So I spoke to my wife. I says, "Oh, listen, I'll go and speak to Black and White Publishing and see what they've got to say." And I liked what they were thinking about. The Art of Scottish Golf is a book that just covers everything in the Scottish game, and I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But
of course,
I like they had a sort of another couple of books. One was The Art of Curie, in Scotland, and they did a really nice job. I loved the way they produced the book. It was just a nice sort of product. And I says, okay, I'll have a wee think about it. And I says, well, you come back with a chapter plan. So I sat down and I just came up with a chapter plan that I felt covered everything. And they said, that's great. So just the way it worked, had to be finished by the end of June. This is now we're talking about. This was January. It had to be finished by the end of June. But actually, that suited me because from June on, it's like mental
madness.
Mental in Scotland and Europe. Everything really happens in the second half of the season. So I took it on, and I would have to say that I got in touch with players, Paul Lawrie, Katrina Matthew, Paul Montgomery, Stevie Gallagher, and Bob McIntyre and people like that, and said, "Listen, I'm taking this book on. I might need your help. Can I send you some questions?" And the response for everyone was amazing.
Oh, that's really nice.
So I knew straight away that was going to be a sort of big help. And then I sat down and started it, and it was actually, I wouldn't say it was easy, but it sort of came easier than I thought it might. Once you sit down and you're writing about something that you should feel comfortable and knowledgeable about, it just helped so much. And as I say, I had all this good material from people within Scottish golf, and it covers obviously Scottish golf. There's loads of books on the history of Scottish golf, and there is a chapter on the history of Scottish golf and everything. But I try to do it differently. I spoke to a couple of golf historians. One of them being a guy called Roger McStravick, who is based in St Andrews, who's written some great books. And I was just talking to him about how does it feel to be a golf historian in St Andrews, writing about the history of St Andrews. And it was just a different perspective, I think. So, that was great. And obviously the courses, and I spoke to caddies. There's a chapter on caddies, and just getting them to talk about some of their stories on working on a Scottish golf course, and it's just got some nice stuff. And obviously the business side of Scottish golf. It was when golf started, everything was made in Scotland, the clubs, the balls, and everything. Nowadays it's very different. There's very few sort of the old traditional companies are no longer around. So like the clubs are made in the Far East, for example, but there's still a couple of companies new companies that are doing stuff, and just talking to the people involved in those, I found that really interesting. And it's I think I was pleased with the end product, and it just came out last week, and it felt quite strange knowing that last Thursday people were waiting on this book arriving from Amazon and whenever, and I think the initial reaction seems to be good. So delighted I took it on. Really delighted I took it on.
Brilliant. So any anecdotes you want to share on here, just to get the listeners enticed as well, without giving away the crown jewels?
They're just everything. It's just when you talk, I think it's great when you hear someone like Katrina Matthew and Paul Lawrie, obviously major champions and Solheim Cups and Ryder Cups, and they still value, like Katrina played golf with her mum and her brother and people like that, and still likes going out at North Berwick or Gullen and playing with pals now. And Paul Lawrie, everyone knows Paul Lawrie's super competitive, and even when he plays with his sons, he'll be competitive. But there's nothing beats going out on a golf course for him with his two sons, Craig and Michael, and his nephew Sean, who's a good player as well. So just stuff like that. Obviously, there's a chapter on Scottish success, and getting Paul to talk about the journey, up to Aberdeen for Newstay when we won the Open with a claret jug in the back seat, and just every glancing over his shoulder every now and again just to see,
just to make sure it actually happened.
So stuff like that is brilliant. But again, obviously that chapter includes when Scotland won the Eisenhower trophy, which is the World Amateur Team Championship in Australia.
Yeah.
And that team was Callum Macaulay, Gavin Deere, and Wallace Booth. And I mean, that was just a terrific achievement. So it just things like that it was so nice just to get people talking about those great moments. And lots of great stories. I mean, Martin Slumbers the R&A chief executive. It was good to get a perspective from him and as the R&A chief executive, but also an Englishman living in Scotland. He can see just everything that Scottish golf brings, and I think the final quote in the book, I got it quite late, was for Sam Turns. Sam phoned me. I was just about finished the book, and he said, he calls me Martino. He's always called me Martino.
Martino.
And he phoned me up. He says, Martino. He says, do you still want those quotes from me? And I said, Samuel. I said, I did say, I think it's my book. The book's finished, or I didn't. I don't think I told him it was finished. I said, it's getting close to finish, Sam. But I says, listen, no, yeah, I would love them, and I made sure that. And his, I think, is the final quote in the book is for Sam, and obviously it's really nice because I knew Sam's dad, Bob, and his mum, June. They were great people when I was sort of starting out and covering Scottish golf and stuff like that. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it's people like that that you the relationships you build over the years, and as I say, I don't know where they got the Martino from, but it stuck. So
that's a pretty Scottish thing to do. That, to be fair, it's never.
It is a bit.
Never call somebody by their actual name.
And obviously the great Sandy Lyle. Yeah, I mean the great Sandy Lyle gets a big mention as well, because I mean Sandy is I'm used to still going out to the Masters in recent years and was there for, and it was quite funny. I think it was 2 years or 3 years ago, and myself and I think it was Michael McEwen from Bunker. We went down to speak to Sandy after his round, and we sort of worked out that this was Sandy's 100th major.
Wow!
And it was like 100, and it was like we went down and says, "Oh, Sandy, you realise this is your 100th major?" "Oh, is it?" He says, "Oh, that's okay." He says, "What do you want to talk about?" I said, "Well, maybe I'll expand on that a little bit to start would be nice." But that was like just typical sort of Sandy being just understated. But he then spoke about it anyway. But yeah, just fantastic achievement, and obviously, what he did at Augusta and also at St George's was great moments for Scottish golf.
Yeah, I mean the shot at Augusta still, it's hard to believe, even still.
Yeah. Well, I obviously wasn't working in golf back then, but I do remember probably there's loads of Scottish shots you sit and remember on television, don't you? And that was definitely one. But I mean, I remember being at the 2004 Ryder Cup in Oakland Hills. I was at the Bunker at the time, and I remember sitting behind the green, the 18th green there when Monty sort of clinched victory in that match. And that was I was only about like 12 or 15 feet away from there, just sitting at the back of the green and stuff like that. That you just money can't buy an experience like that. And I still go. I've been lucky to go to the Masters for a good few years now, and every year I go back, I sort of think this could be the last time. So you have one last walk down at the Amen Corner on the Sunday just in case, because I mean it's a very, very special place down there, and the whole place is special. But it's I mean, great sport to cover golf, and I mean I'll forever be grateful for the opportunities I've had, and I'm 60 this year, so the clock's ticking. So we'll enjoy as many as I can.
Well, I think, I mean, I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people, but we're all thankful that you're still committed to giving us all the updates that you bring, whether that is from a major championship, whether it's from grassroots golf, elite amateur, whatever it is, because there's not many people doing it.
I appreciate that, and I do think that people are in for a wee bit of a shock when someone like myself and Nick Roger, who worked all this stuff for the Herald, and once we won't be replaced. I mean, the numbers on paper are dwindling all the time, and golf's not top of the list for people. Football's king, and if somebody can fit in a wee golf report here and there, they'll do that. But I very much doubt, from a newspaper point of view, if it'll be the same level of golf. That obviously I'd go back to the days of the legendary Jock McVicker, Raymond Jacobs, Matt Robertson, Norman Mayer, Ian Wood, Colin Farquharson in Aberdeen. These people are sadly no longer with us, and Although there's certainly certain people there just now that will continue to do everything they can to cover the game, but I do fear one day going forward that during the Open, the Scottish Open, there's blanket coverage of golf in the tabloids and the other papers, but the other times, sadly, unless a Scot wins, obviously that, but a lot of the time it's forgotten about, and that's quite sad. And it is a day will arrive where people might I'm not saying appreciate what we do, because I think people like yourself, and I appreciate what you're saying, that people do appreciate it, but it's a changing industry in the newspaper world.
Absolutely. So moving into the back nine here, Martin. Not a full 9 holes of questions. You've probably mentioned some of these questions, but we'll try. So, favourite golfer? Who's your favourite golfer?
Well,
try not to offend anybody who's contributed to your book, obviously, which was very kind of them.
Well, I listen to all the Scots for different reasons. A lot of the Scots are fantastic golfers and fantastic memories. But I mean, as a boy, funnily enough, my hero was Ben Crenshaw.
Oh wow!
The American Ben Crenshaw. I remember going through to the 1977 Open at Turnberry with my mum and dad and my best pal, and obviously Nicholas and Watson fought out that fantastic finish. But I just wanted to go and see Ben Crenshaw for some reason.
Yeah.
He was someone that I just took a shine to just the name. He was a great putter and stuff like that. So he was someone I sort of idolised. And then for me, the one and only Seve Ballesteros. I think I just love watching Seve.
Yeah.
Seve, obviously, the charisma that he had, and I just think the way Seve played the game was like fantastic. And,
I think he inspired so many people of so many generations, but certainly my own generation, so many people talk about Seve being the one that they watched.
Yeah. And I remember I was in the stand that famous day when they produced the celebration that's now the logo. And just to be here, I was a fan there that day, and I mean that was special. And it's funny, I actually bumped into him at the Challenge Tour Grand Final. His son Javier, he at the Dunhill Links a few years ago. Javi had never been at St Andrews, and this morning he had been invited to play in the Dunhill that year.
Wow!
And someone said to me, "Do you want to go along and speak to him?" And so I did an interview with him on the course, and it was the first day he'd ever been in, and he'd gone over to the spot on the 18th hole where his dad produced that celebration, and just fantastic. And Javi, he tried to become a sort of player himself. It didn't really happen for him, but he's now a manager for a company in Spain, and he's managing a couple of young Spanish boys, Angel Hidalgo, who won the Madrid Open.
Oh, he was brilliant. How good was that finish? He was unbelievable.
Phenomenal. And a young guy, another Angel Ayora, who a 20-year-old who graduated for the Challenge Tour. So, he wears the cap that's got the Seve logo on it, and just talks about just how he thinks about his dad every day. So, for me, I mean, Seve was the man.
Absolutely. Right, best golfer you've ever played with. Again, this might offend some of these people you've mentioned earlier, but best golfer you've ever played with.
Well, I did play. Most recent as a professional, I remember. This is a good story because Keith Pelly, who was the DP World Tour chief executive before he went back to Canada, he's a really sort of charismatic guy, and the Scottish Open was in one of the early years of the Genesis Scottish Open at the Renaissance Club, and Keith said, right, I think it was about the Masters. He says, right, we're going to get a game at the Renaissance Club. He says, you, me, Stevie Gallagher and Matt Warren. So I thought, nothing will happen to this. But about a month later, I got Scott Crockett, who's the head of communications at the DP Borough 2, got in touch. He says, right, Keith definitely wants this game to happen at the Renaissance Club. So it did happen, and I remember turning up, and I was very inadequate in terms of, because Keith's a good player himself. And,
right.
So it was myself and Keith against Stevie and Matt Warren. And it was great. It was one of those fantastic days. It was so good. But Keith Belly, at different times, obviously. I think Scott Crockett was behind this, but Stevie Gallagher's a big Celtic fan, Matt Warren's a big Rangers fan. So at different times he appeared on a tee with either a Rangers strip on or the Celtic strip on to try and wind up the other one. And actually on the first green, he had par 5 we were playing, and he had about a 15-foot putt for a birdie. And he was lining up the putt, and then he said, well, wait a minute. And he got into his back pocket, he pulled out this page, and it was a page for a golf magazine. It was Mark Warren's 4 best putting tips. And he said, Mark, he says, what one of these should I follow here? And of course he rolled in this 15-foot birdie putt, and it was like, honestly, we actually won that day, and it had nothing to do with me. It was Keith who sort of did all the damage, but it was just such a fantastic day. And I mean, obviously, Stevie Gallagher was a good friend. I've known Mark for a long time, so it was really nice to spend some time with them on the golf course.
Well, this is a great question next, because one of the guys you're talking about hit one of the best shots I've ever seen live, and that was Mark Warren. But best shot you've ever seen live?
Best shot I've ever seen live. Wow. Let me have a wee think about that one. Go on to the next one. I'm going to
we'll go to the next one.
Think about that one.
Favourite course in Scotland?
Favourite course in Scotland?
That might be difficult as well.
Yeah, I would have to say for me, Muirfield's my favourite golf course in Scotland. It's a good test of golf, fantastic test of golf. I love the fact it's the 2 concentric circles with the front nine, there's a loop outside and then the inside loop coming back. Just phenomenal, and it's just a special place. And for me, I mean, I love Carnoustie. The old course has grown on me like a lot of others. I think Loch Lomond's a great golf course as well. But I think, if people do ask me, I'm being honest in saying that I think Muirfield's the best course for me.
Brilliant. I'm going to go favourite golf hole you've played. What's your favourite hole?
I don't think I've ever played it well, and I would have to say I think you stand on the tee at the road hole, and I know where people say you've got to hit it, but I'm still never convinced that you can go that far right. And I think for an amateur, I play off 11, but I've played off 11 for a long time, and probably more like 15 or 16 or up to 20 now. And if you're actually not sure if you're going to slice it or hook it, you're standing.
Not an easy hole.
Not a lot of confidence, but I think and it's even the second shot there. It's just there's something about it that it's just very, very special golf hole. I know obviously recently Bob McIntyre sort of not said a few things about it, but I think Bob was just Bob in a heat of a moment, and not unfair to Bobby tweeted the next day saying, "Listen, no, nothing personal," and it's one of those holes that can get to you, and but I think the iconic hole it is, and the challenge it presents is just really very, very special.
Honestly, there's 2 things that shocked me about the hole. First one is the depth of the green, or lack of it, because the strip between the bunker and the road is literally nothing, and then the slope on it's phenomenal. The TV never does these things justice anyway, but the slope from the back to the bunker is just incredible. You've never got a straight putt.
No, you're right, and it's just a card record, isn't it? I mean, any time it's an Open or a Dunhill or a Women's Open, it's just you just don't know until someone gets through that hole. A lead could disappear. and everything can change. So I think that just showed, and obviously the time of the round it come, just is makes it even better, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Well, just ending in this one in terms of golf questions. So, how often do you get to play these days?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually get to play more in the winter time.
Of course, yeah.
The sort of height of the summer's a no-no.
Yeah.
No, I don't like playing the week of the Scottish Open. It's just impossible, really. And the Opens, there's that much on, stuff like that. So, no, I went through a spell. Let me tell a really story about myself in a minute. I went through a spell where we're very lucky. We get, if we go to a media day, you get to speak to a player, you get a story, and then you get to play the golf course. And I went through a spell where I just felt, especially the demands now, where everything has to be instant. It has to go on the website and stuff like that. And I felt I need to, you need to sort of just write the story and forget the golf part. And then it was like, no, you have to make the most of. It's part of the job, playing the course and stuff like that. But one day, I'll never forget this one. It was the media day for it must have been the 2013 Open at Muirfield, and we had the press conference just when we arrived. So they then had to batter out this story, at least one story, maybe two stories. So I then almost ran onto the first tee. Didn't even hit a practice putt. Didn't hit anything. Stood up, took a swing, and missed the ball. Missed the ball.
Super.
And it's like, I'm standing there thinking, gee, I've never done that for years. Never done that for years. So it's like, my head was down, had another swing, hit it the next time. I'm walking off the tee, and the starter said to me, well, we'll read about that in the Scotsman tomorrow then. And it was like, I know the boy, he's a really nice bloke. But the next day, it's funny, the next day I was in the office and somebody had put on social media, it was a picture of Carlos Tevez was playing at North Berwick. And the sports editor says, can you find it, phone up and see what that was about, how did he get on, blah, blah, blah. So I phoned up and it was the pros Martin Hush, David Hush's son. So I've known Martin for a long time. I went on the phone and I said, hi Martin, how you doing? And then he says, oh, wait a minute. He says, I've got something to ask you. He says, tell me about your missed shot on the first tee at Muirfield yesterday. And it's like, my God, the jungle drums were beating down in East Lothian about that. So, anyway.
In his Twitter,
Exactly. So, yeah. I don't know what was that in response to your question. What one was that?
How often do you get to play these days?
But I like to. I try and get a game with my pals at Aberdour once a week in the winter, and we've obviously been lucky. We were out last Tuesday, I think it was, and the first week in November, and it was short sleeves. So
wow,
incredible. Well, flat cam, never seen the 54th like that in November, but it was terrific. And and it's just we just have a good laugh and talk about football, talk about the golf and everything like that. So it's that to me is a sort of what golf's all about. So
absolutely. So Martin, just wrapping up here. Listen, thanks for taking us through your journey. Loving hearing about the book. People should go and get that now on Amazon. And then just closing up, is there any social media handles or places they can go to get more information about you in the book?
No, I mean, obviously I'm very active on X, formerly Twitter. I like to sort of keep people up to date with everything that's going on in the Scottish game there, just the sort of Scottish scores every day. And also obviously on Facebook as well. This year I've been trying to build up a sort of grassroots roundup because a lot of these events don't get the coverage they maybe once did, and I feel that there's a place for that, and I sort of was driving that this year just to do it, and it was getting a lot of good. Obviously, nowadays we're sort of judged by page views on the website and stuff like that. So
Of course.
I also do we also do like a weekly golf newsletter now, and it's more a chatty thing, just about what's obviously the column, my Scotsman column every week's more on sort of maybe some of the heavier stuff in golf.
Yeah.
But golf newsletter's just a good way to keep in touch with people, and I enjoy doing that. So I mean, it's as I've said more than once, being someone who just loves golf, love seeing Scottish golfers do well at any level, and obviously someone like Gemma Driver has been great in the women's game in recent years on the back of what Katrina Matthew achieved. She's phenomenal, and I still think Katrina never gets the credit she deserves for what she did over a long period of time.
Absolutely.
And of course now obviously what Bob McIntyre in particular is doing in the men's game. I mean, to win those two events this year, and really
it was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Really phenomenal. To win the Scottish, Bob made no bones about what event he wanted to win, and to do it in the style he did it.
It was brilliant.
It's just phenomenal. But hey, I'm not going to forget the shot would have to be Paul Laurie's 4-iron at Carnoustie. Very, very special, obviously. I mean, for what Paul did that day was phenomenal. And I'd covered Paul as an assistant when he came through on the Tartan Tour, and though someone would have said Paul would have won a major at that time, probably not. But the one thing about Paul Laurie from an early age was Paul was a winner, and right in his career he's proved that. When Paul gets in a position, he's really good at finishing off, and to see him do what he did that day at Carnoustie was phenomenal. So I don't think it gets really much better than that, does it?
No, and I think at that point you could give it a toss-up between him and Sandy for the two best shots, so we'll call it a tie.
Correct.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thanks a lot,
Pleasure.
man. It's been brilliant having you on. Thanks for joining me.
Pleasure.
Thanks for listening again, folks. Really enjoyed catching up with Martin, hearing all about his life and his new book, The Art of Scottish Golf. As always, I'd love you to like, share and subscribe to the podcast, and I'll have another episode soon. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.